Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association, connecting Virginians to their government. We're so honored to have two chairmen from Northern Virginia with us today. Delegate Luke Torian, Chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Delegate Mark Sickles, Chairman of Health, Welfare, and Institutions, and also Vice Chair of Appropriations. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here, Woody.
We're fast approaching crossover, Mr. Chairman. Where are we in terms of the budget, just generally?
Generally, we are on schedule, meeting all of our timelines. We've received all of our budget amendments from the members. We processed those and placed those at the appropriate place in the budget, and now we're just simply waiting for legislation that's being referred to come upstairs to the 13th floor. We're looking at the legislation as it is coming up to us daily, and considering those numbers and requests as well.
And Delegate Sickles, I understand there has been a plethora of bills introduced. I don't know if the number of budget amendments are unusually large as well this year.
There were a lot of budget amendments, and in my committee in health, we are sending several bills up, but they're not that many in my committee. We had about 170 bills, which sounds like a lot, but other committees, compared to Courts Committee, it's not that many, and a lot of ours are smaller bills, but we do have some that have a good price tag on them that we'll have to, look at closely.
Mr. Chairman, let's talk about some basics. There are two budget bills before you. I think there's House Bill 29, House Bill 30. I think they're companions on the Senate side. What's the difference between those two bills?
The first one we called the caboose bill. It's like an extenuation of the current fiscal year, and then obviously House Bill 30 is what we'll be dealing with relative to the governor's proposals, and then we'll put them all together and produce a bill that will cover the next biennium.
So whoever comes in as the next governor will be sort of stuck with this additional House Bill 30.
That's correct, but they can propose amendments to it. Even in non-budget years, people call it the budget, even though technically they're just amendments to the underlying budget, and we do that every year. So, but the two-year budget's a good process for long-term planning and for people to know what's going on and kind of figure out what's in the future. But we do a budget bill every year, but it's really just amendments.
So what's the state of the economy in the Commonwealth? I know that the Commissioner of Finance made a presentation to your committee maybe a week or two ago. How do things stand?
The state of the economy in the Commonwealth is very good right now. We probably have the lowest unemployment rate across the nation, pretty much at 2.6%. Our economy is steadily growing, and we think that the governor, during the course of his tenure, has made some outstanding economic decisions for the Commonwealth. And part of the challenge that we have is some of the high-tech jobs that are available is finding people to employ to fill those jobs. So our economy right now is very strong, it's healthy, it has grown tremendously, and we're planning appropriately for the growth that we've experienced.
So I take it revenues are coming in as anticipated, although there's some things we won't know because they're those non-withholding, high net worth taxpayers that we don't have the numbers for yet.
Yeah, the non-withholding taxpayers are always the biggest mystery. You really don't know what's going on in the economy where very wealthy people will be selling assets and then have taxable, taxes due. but our sales tax is very strong, as the chairman was saying. We do have our revenues for this biennium are coming in a little bit greater than projected, so we're in good shape that way. We got to be careful. That's why we have these reserve funds, because the non-withholding taxpayers may or may not produce the money that from year to year that we can rely on more with sales tax and you know, your regular withholding from your paycheck on the withholding.
So how much is that reserve? And I know there's a difference between the reserve that was created by the former chairman and also the rainy day fund.
Well, we have two reserves that we're operating with, and you're absolutely correct. We have historically what is called the rainy day fund, and we're trying to grow that. I think we want to get that up to about 11% of budget. And then the chairman, previous chairman Jones, created another reserve fund, which is kind of like a backup fund for us that we kind of put, when we have good revenue, we can put money aside in that in the event that the economy slows down. And our effort is to protect our AAA bond rating through our reserve funds.
So why is that AAA bond rating so important, delegates?
Because we have a lot of demand for capital. We borrow money to build college buildings and other infrastructure, and if our bond rating remains AAA, we'll get the best rates the market has to offer. That's the main thing. It saves taxpayers money on those types of expenses. We limit our annual debt retirement to 5% of the budget, which is another conservative fiscal stance that helps keep our AAA bond rating as well.
Now, what's happening with lottery revenues? I understand there's been some erosion as a result of proliferation of what's labeled as gray machines.
Absolutely, and we're trying to deal with that now, what to do with them. There's options on the table to eliminate them completely, to help the lottery restore their previous sales, or to tax and regulate them. And we're going through that now, plus a lot of other casino proposals to open up Virginia to full casino gaming.
I take it helps immensely that the cap on sequestration from the federal level, especially dealing with money for defense, has aided our economy.
Absolutely, and if we have to go through another sequence of sequestration, it would hurt the Virginia economy dramatically. So we are grateful for our federal partners who are looking out for us to make sure that we keep that cap and that we can continue to conservatively grow our Virginia economy.
Let's talk a little bit about education, because the governor has some aggressive proposals, especially in terms of K-12. Can you talk to us about those?
Well, I think one of the things that we're looking at in regards to K through 12, we're just looking at salary increases pretty much for our teachers and professionals, because we feel like if we can continue to motivate them, encourage them, we'll continue to have one of the best educational systems in the nation.
What about early childhood education? I think he wants to put more money there as well.
He's got a very aggressive proposal, I think $95 million to try to get at-risk 4-year-olds and even at-risk 3-year-olds prepared for kindergarten, prepared for public school. And we're looking at that closely to see whether we can implement that or not on the schedule, pretty aggressive schedule that they've laid out. So we've been trying to get at-risk 4-year-olds pre-K for 20-some years in the budget, but the localities have not spent it all. They've sent a lot of it back. And for me personally, haven't talked to the chairman about this, but me personally, if we're going to spend it, I want to make sure it's used. I want to make sure people are taken care of and not be sent back here and us say we're doing something that we can't really do. So we're looking at that very closely.
Long-term projections, I understand, because I had Ken Plumman here earlier today. He always focuses on the ability of children at the 3rd grade level to actually read at the 3rd grade level. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's a predictor of whether they're going to be involved in our criminal justice system, which impacts the budget long-term in terms of having to build more correctional facilities.
Well, I agree with Delegate Sickles in that if we're able to influence our 3-year-olds 4 years earlier before they get to kindergarten, then once they get there and they have a certain set of skill set that they're operating with, then by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're well on their way. And it's these early investments that we have seen that are quite impactful. So when they get to third grade, they're in a good position.
To what extent do local school districts or the localities in general have a say in teacher salaries? Don't they have to come up with a portion of it?
Well, in my county, Fairfax County, they have to pay for the majority of it. It depends. It's a sliding scale based on the ability to pay. That's the theory. And that formula called the local composite index hasn't been changed in a long time. And there's a lot of gripes with it here and there. And I don't know. That's very difficult to change. But in my case, the county would have to pay for over 75% of the raise that we would give them here. Other poor jurisdictions would have to pay much less. But even those smaller jurisdictions without the resources would have a hard time, they tell us, making the match. So we have to try to balance that and possibly send money back just on a per student basis that without strings attached. That's another way to get money to the localities.
Now, what about the community colleges? Are they going to be adequately funded from your perspective?
I think they are going to be adequately funded. They have become a tremendous resource for our educational system and a great option for some of our students who cannot afford four-year college. And one of the other pieces that's important is specialized trades that they will be able to receive at the community college level as well. And then they are able to move much more quick out into the workforce. And so our community colleges and their influence and attraction have grown over the recent years.
So workforce development, career educational training is significant here in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. It's workforce is the number one issue on attracting businesses to our state. More than anything else, they want to know that they have a workforce that can come and do the job they need safely and have the skills and education to do in a lot of cases, high-tech manufacturing and things like that. So we are really focused on that in the last few years, and in this governor's budget, he's made it a priority on his G3 program.
So what's the impact of Amazon in Northern Virginia?
Good and bad, depending on who you ask.
Yes.
Job creation, economic growth and development, probably a little bit of stress on housing and transportation getting around the area, but it just speaks to the leadership of the state, and we're able to attract companies like Amazon to come to the Commonwealth. We're going to be met with our challenges, but we're up to the task of meeting them and adequately providing what we need in Northern Virginia. We're one of the best managed states in the nation, and a lot of credit goes to our leadership.
Now, what about the cost of higher education? We've got some great universities. We know that those costs keep rising. I think it was last year there was a freeze based upon some subsidies to our universities.
Yes,
What's
sir.
happening there?
Woody, it was an optional freeze. They could take the money that we gave them for their university and not raise tuition, or raise tuition, and almost all they all took the money. That's helped keep the price down. We need our young adults to graduate without a huge debt load, and that is a big issue nationwide. It's a balancing act, and the cost of paying professors, good faculty, is high. Up in our area, it's particularly high. And if you're a professor at George Mason or Marymount, you can get more money at American or GW or Georgetown or something and not have to move. I mean, you can stay in the same neighborhood. So the salary pressure is high. We've got the governor has recognized that and has got a little bit extra in the budget for George Mason University, and so we hope to keep that in the budget and maybe give them a little more even.
I even see there's additional funding for historically black colleges and universities as well.
Yes, the governor has looked very favorably upon Virginia State University and Norfolk State University. I mean, they're part of our university system, and they are very deserving of receiving that kind of financial encouragement and attention from the governor and his budget proposal.
You mentioned the 3 Gs. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. I think it's go to school, get a job, then give back. I think the governor said in his address. Talk to us about some of the stories around that he related, how difficult it is for some people to go to school without some type of financial support. Getting a job may not be easy, but then you want them to give back.
Yes, sir. The proposal basically says the first day you get into community college, instead of taking economics or Western civilization or English, that you start immediately on a job skill. And what they're trying to do is, so many kids, and these are coming from families without a lot of resources most of the time, quit during it. So they studied, how can we keep these kids in school, and if we can't keep them in there, at least every minute they stay there, they're going to have a skill or better skills for the private marketplace and a job. Hopefully they can, a lot of community college students are working full time, so they have to accommodate their schedules, and so you can build their skills immediately, and then hopefully if they stay in school, they can broaden their education and possibly move to a 4-year school later if they need to. But there are many, many jobs in Virginia that only require skills that we're not producing now. So that's why we're laser focused on getting people skilled for the jobs in this economy.
Welders, for example, physicians, assistants, cybersecurity certificates, those kinds of things are available through those community colleges.
And that's the beauty about our community college system, is that you get specialized skill sets where we're gonna have some young people who do not desire to go to a 4-year institution. They just simply want to get a trade, go out in the workforce, earn a living. Some of them who get married early, start families. And these jobs are available. And so being able to focus on the uniqueness of saying, if you come to this community college and you want this particular skill set, we can get you certified and trained in 2 years, and then you can go out and get a job in high-tech areas such as cybersecurity and make a wonderful salary.
And I take it that we're also placing emphasis at our high school levels of dual enrollment with some of these community colleges.
Yeah, where kids are really academically inclined, there's a lot of options, particularly in Northern Virginia, to take advanced placement courses and actually maybe get a year of college ahead of time through their high school experience. So that's something that the many parents and kids take advantage of.
What about additional funding in the high schools, actually K through 12, and then in the high schools for more support personnel? Our children bring many more social problems with them these days. They need counseling, they need mental health work, that kind of thing. Is there any more move afoot to shore up those types of resources?
Oh, absolutely. I think if one would take a look at the governor's proposed budget, particularly in the area of school counselors, we have tried to make sure that we have the appropriate ratio counselor to students, and we've been working over that the last 2 to 3 years to increase having more counselors in our school system. So we are addressing those issues, and we're very pleased to do so.
And there's a lot of diversity in our schools now. I can't remember the number of languages that children bring to schools in Northern Virginia now too, so there's a need for people who have those kinds of skills.
Absolutely. Our high schools are extremely diverse, and they bring a lot of world or cultural experiences they can share with other students, and I think it helps broaden people's world understanding. And we have all these kind of cultural nights at our schools, and everyone gets along in my area. It's remarkable to see. Northern Virginia is a melting pot from people around the world, and I think we benefit greatly from it.
Let's turn our attention to transportation, which is always a big issue. There's the Transportation Committee, but you deal with the funding of those matters. I know the governor is proposing a tax increase. Obviously, we have more fuel-efficient cars. The gas tax is not producing what was anticipated, so there is this tax. What kind of feedback have you received concerning that?
Well, Madam Speaker, as you know, Woody, has HB 1414 that is before us. That is a very robust transportation bill that we're looking at right now. There are a lot of moving parts in it, but we're trying to address the fact that Transportation is different a little bit. I mean, when you have electric cars and things of that nature, there are some challenges that we have before us that we're seeking to address when it comes to transportation construction, which is a big challenge for us as well. Right now, House Finance has 1414 before them, and once they finish looking at that bill, they'll send it up to appropriations, and we hope that we'll have a good product to give to the Commonwealth.
And there are continuing transportation issues in your neck of the woods, so to speak, as well.
Well, one of the greatest satisfactions I've had in this job for the last 16 years is the progress we made on transportation, particularly the breakthrough in 2013, where we finally raised some money, and we had to do it on a regional basis. Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads have a special assessment. That has been critical to the progress we've made. We've got a $5 billion project going on in the Route 66 corridor now, and we've focused on moving people through the corridor, not moving cars through the corridor, because we would never have the resources to widen roads, take people's houses with the cost of property, the value of property in Northern Virginia. So we are being really successful in moving more people through the same corridor through this dynamic tolling. A lot of people don't like it, but you can get 2 people in your car and it's free. And it opens up transit opportunities, because no one would ride a bus, or very few people would ride a bus to sit in traffic at a standstill on the interstate. That's not going to happen. So if you get on a bus in Prince William County or Southern Fairfax County, you can be in the Pentagon in 20-some minutes, and we have a lot of options in Northern Virginia that have been developed by the community and with the help of VDOT over the years, and so we've made a lot of progress.
I take it there's some distaste for tolling, given the way the funding has gone in terms of I-81 and then this new tax. Some people are suggesting at some point we're going to have to do away with a gas tax and implement something more innovative, like a tax on the number of miles you drive.
I think the solution is going to be very difficult to reach. If you're taking away the gas tax, then you really do need to have something to replace it with. And as we look at these transportation challenges that we have and the funding mechanism, what is going to be suitable for the consumer? And what is going to be affordable for the consumer. You give up one thing, then what do you replace it with? And we have to be very careful. Tolling is a major challenge for us in our community along the I-95 corridor coming out of Washington, D.C. all the way down to Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg. The Easy Pass tolling can become extremely high from time to time, but it all depends on the demands. And what we have learned and what some of these surveys have shown us is that some of our constituents do not mind paying the high tolls in some instances because they want to get home to their families. They want to be there for their children activities. But then again, for others, it's a huge concern, and affordability really matters. So we continue to work with Transurban to try to find a meaningful solution as we tackle our transportation challenge.
What about the impact of increased gas taxes in rural communities?
Well, I mean, I buy my gas on the way to down here at Wawa in Fredericksburg and paid $2.17 the other day. If I buy it at home, it's $2.69. Sure. I think it's very difficult for the consumer to know why. We're used to having these wild swings in the price of gas. People know the price of gas more than any other commodity because we stare at it when we drive down the road. Not many other products are like the price of milk is not on a sign where we're driving around all the time. And it's generally unpopular, but it's way we fund our transportation system. I mean, it's the primary source of revenue, and because of the electric cars and the hybrid vehicles, and just like the car I drive a little Volkswagen Golf. It gets really good mileage. So the long-term trend for transportation sources, as we've been discussing, is down. And so this big package that Chairman was speaking of, it's a transition period only to get us to some other solution down the road. So the raising the gas tax is politically unpopular a lot of times, but when you have a discussion with people and you talk about what the alternatives are, a lot of times they'll get back to, well, it is a user fee of some kind, and it's related to how much you use the roads. And it used to be a lot more related to it than it is now, but it's a big problem going forward.
One of the biggest economic drivers in the state is the Port of Virginia. And I take it we're going to continue to invest in that facility in order to ensure that we remain number one on the East Coast.
We, last session, I believe it was, invested $350 million in the port to increase our dredging potential. And it will make us the #1 port on the East Coast. And I will tell you, it is absolutely astounding what it has done for import and export for us, being able to move ships in and out of the port. It's a major revenue generator for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And I assume that you're in favor of continued investment there as well.
Well, absolutely. One proposal that's before us now, Woody, is to invest in creating a space for offshore wind development.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the state wants to be, we have a natural advantage in providing the onshore construction of turbines and blades and the monopoles they'll sit on, because we have no bridge air draft restraints like most other seaports do along the East Coast. There's no bridge you have to get under, and these things are very big. And so a lot of people are working on making that happen. It's a serious, Dominion has its own proposal to build 200 turbines off Virginia, but there's also one just to our south in North Carolina. Maryland has it, New Jersey has a big offshore wind field coming. So we're on the cusp of developing this industry from scratch, and hopefully Virginia will be a big part of that.
Less than a minute left. I want to give you both an opportunity to tell your audience what you think a successful end of this session will look like. I'll start with you, Mr. Chairman.
I think a successful end of the session, and I hope my vice chair agrees, is that we will get a budget out, and we will get a budget out that we hope that the Commonwealth will be pleased with.
Great. Mr.
Well,
Chairman,
yeah.
HWI, your opinion?
Well, I just want to say about the budget, that's the most important thing we're doing here. That's where our values show up. I think you'll see a little bit, you've seen it with the governor's introduced budget, the things that we're trying to do. So that's number one, but there's many other things that are going to change. I mean, we're going to have some what we think are common sense gun safety regulations. We're going to have discrimination protections for people for the first time. We're going to do some energy regulation, comprehensive, that moves us to more a carbon-free economy.
Great. Good to see you, Luke Torian, Mark Sickles. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.